All right, today we are diving deep into a corner of the tech world that is, well, notoriously difficult, unbelievably powerful, and can be just soul-crushingly frustrating. We're talking about GPU pass-through, the art of giving a virtual machine direct, raw access to a physical graphics card. It's an amazing technique, but this is a cautionary tale about when all that magic just suddenly disappears.
I think we have to start right here, because this quote just sets the scene perfectly. For anyone who's tried this, it's not just a technical process, it feels like a dark art. It works beautifully right up until the moment it doesn't. And when it breaks, man, it feels like you've been cursed by some ancient tech demon.
And that's really the big question we're digging into. Just imagine you've got this perfectly stable, high-performance system humming along, and then one day, poof, with zero warning, it just implodes. So let's piece together this tech horror story.
Our story kicks off like a lot of tragedies do, right? In a time of total peace and stability, the calm, right before the storm.
I mean, this is the absolute dream for so many of us in the home lab world, right? You're using the power of Proxmox to run a VM, but you pass a dedicated graphics card straight to it for legit native gaming performance. And for months, this system was absolutely flawless. It was rock solid. And that creates this false sense of security, this feeling that you've finally tamed the beast.
And this is the moment. This is where it all goes sideways. A totally routine reboot, something you do every week or two. No updates were installed, no configs were touched, nothing. But when that system came back online, the pass-through was just gone. The GPU, a GTX 1660 Super, had completely vanished from the virtual machine.
And these were the cryptic breadcrumbs left at the scene of the crime. Now, the thing about these errors is how completely, utterly unhelpful they are. The original author's translation is probably the best one I've ever heard. Lol, your GPU's in limbo, good luck fixing that, idiot. This is that first step into the troubleshooting abyss.
So what do you do when logic totally fails you? Well, in the world of GPU pass-through, you don't really turn to science. You turn to superstition.
This is just perfect because it's exactly what it feels like. You're not configuring a computer anymore, you're performing a ritual. Every single step is this desperate plea to appease some unseen system god. You're tweaking boot parameters, editing module configs, blacklisting drivers, all based on forum posts that feel less like technical advice and more like ancient spells.
And speaking of that advice, right? You dive into the forums, and you're hit with this tidal wave of conflicting solutions. The very first person you see is absolutely convinced that this one little option, multifunction equals on, is the silver bullet. Problem solved.
But then, literally, the next comment just dismisses that. Nah, man, they say. The real problem is the default open-source Nvidia driver, Nouveau. You have to blacklist it, or you're totally doomed. It's a completely different fix.
And of course, then the Proxmox veteran shows up, insisting it's all about the kernel arguments. You need this very specific super long incantation or it's game over. And the user in our story? Oh yeah, they tried them all. Every single combination. And the result? Still completely dead in the water.
All right, so after you've tried every software spell you can think of, the investigation has to turn to the hardware. And when we're talking about pass-through problems, there's one very, very usual suspect.
So here's the deal, and it's a crucial one. In the community, there is a world of difference between trying this with Nvidia and trying it with AMD. So why? Well, historically, Nvidia actively blocked virtualization on their consumer cards to protect their super expensive Quadro line. And while they've kind of relaxed this, that legacy of hacks and weird workarounds is still with us. Meanwhile, the general vibe for AMD has pretty much always been, it just works.
And this is what's just so maddening. While our Nvidia user is literally tearing their hair out, some AMD user just casually drops a comment like this. No drama, no weird rituals, no weekends completely lost to troubleshooting. It just works. We're talking about a completely different universe of user experience here.
But what if it's not just the brand of the GPU? I mean, what if the problem is deeper? What if this is some kind of conspiracy between all the components in the machine?
And this is the paranoid thought that starts to creep in. The timing is just, it's too perfect, it's too cruel. Could the hardware have actually physically died at the precise moment of that one reboot? So to test this, the user booted into a live Linux environment, bypassing Proxmox completely. And the result? The GPU still wouldn't work right. The horrifying possibility of a dead card was suddenly very, very real.
So now the list of suspects just got a whole lot longer. Is it the GPU itself? Or maybe it's an issue with the IMMU groups on that Ryzen CPU NB450 motherboard combo. Or is the simplest answer the real one, that the software is just messing with you? The problem could be anywhere, and that is a truly maddening place to be.
And you always get this kind of cryptic wisdom from the experienced old hands, right? It sounds so profound, like there's some secret handshake you're just not getting. But for somebody who has already followed the guides to the letter multiple times, it's just not helpful. It just makes you feel like you failed some unwritten test.
So after all the rituals, all the form diving, and all the hardware conspiracies, what's the real takeaway here? It's that the user's entire approach was based on a flawed idea. The idea that this was a system you could configure, instead of what it really is, a gamble you take.
This is the lesson. This is the lesson you learn the hard way. GPU pass-through, especially with certain hardware, isn't a stable, predictable system. It is a gamble. You are lining up a dozen different complex variables, from BIOS settings to kernel modules, and you're just hoping they all land on heads. You're flipping a coin and praying to the IOMU gods.
So let's just boil this whole horror story down to its essence. GPU pass-through feels like black magic because it's so fragile it's not even funny. We're talking one single reboot away from total disaster. The advice out there, while well-intentioned, is just a chaotic storm of contradictions. And the final, cynical piece of advice? If you value your time and your sanity, maybe just get an AMD card.
And that's what we'll leave you with. This whole ordeal forces you to ask a really fundamental question about your relationship with technology. We buy this hardware to serve us, right? To be our tool. But after an experience like this, you can't help but wonder if sometimes it has a mind of its own, and if maybe, just maybe, it's trolling you.